and real estate is like chess. You have to think 3 moves down the board. You know, you have to understand if something happens here, it's going to affect two moves down. And what are those 2 moves? And a lot of that, Jeff, you and I it happens because we're experienced.
All right, what's going on, BE3 Nation? We've got a really fun Happy Agent podcast for you today. And first of all, we've got myself, Jeff Beggins. We're sitting here with a couple other co-hosts.
Craig Beggins over here.
Mike Puma.
And our special guest today is actually really special. And he brings such a cool, diverse background and lens to this industry. Real excited to have you with us today, Mr. Joe Diener.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to be here.
Very good. So, Joe, from your perspective, I'd like to hear, just do a quick little background, little intro, kind of who you are, what you were doing before real estate, how you got into real estate, just kind of how we are today, where we are from your perspective. Then we'll hit you with a couple questions from there.
Okay. So the first thing I did out of college was I was a teacher for 2 years and realized there was no way I could possibly support my family on $6,300 a year. So I got into sales in 1979 and went with a Fortune 500 company. It was with them for 22 years in sales management. I was a product manager. And then the company I was with, More Business Forms, was just starting to, you know, their product line was being eaten up by technology. You know, we used to pre-print every form. Well, now all of a sudden the laser printer printed the form and variable information at the same time. So it was gone away. A friend of mine was in real estate, said, you know, why don't you get into real estate? And you bought homes, you sold homes, you built homes, you know what you're doing. So I hemmed and hawed, and then I said, well, okay, let me get my license. He goes, just come work for me for the weekend and help me. It was, you know, 2003. It was crazy time. So I went working for him part-time, and in 2 months I was making more than I was at my full-time job, and said, okay, I can do this.
What state was this in?
Yeah.
What state was this in?
This is in Maryland.
Okay.
In Maryland. So jumped into real estate full-time, quit my full-time job. They were like, you can't do this. You've been doing, you got a pension and you're 22 years. And I'm like, you're going to be taken over in a few months because you just don't know what you're doing. And a year later, they were bought out by somebody else. So a lot of the people lost their jobs. So I just made the right decision at the right time and got out. So I sold in Maryland for 5 years. And my daughter moved down here, and I was visiting her and said, you know what, I can sell a home in Florida and I don't need a snowblower to do it. So I moved down here, and it was a rough move. It was 2007, end of 2007, when the market was crashing. I had no sphere of influence. I did a lot of open houses, and I did open houses on REO properties because we did a lot of REOs at Coldwell Banker at the time. So I did them and managed to survive. And look, I had some money in the bank. You know, the rule is always pay yourself first. And did okay. And then started in relo and have built a sphere since then. You know, now it's going on, you know, total of 17 years, total real estate. And I had a client come down here from Maryland and sold him a house here. My past client.
Hey, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, before we go too far, I want to back up real quick because there's a lot of agents that weren't agents in 07, 08, right? And so they're scared now because this is the first real blip in the radar that many of them have experienced since getting into real estate. Most of them got in, and ever since they've gotten in, it's been, you know, this upward trajectory. Everyone's happy. There's always people buying. Now there's some fear in the marketplace. I think, you know, you can talk to how productive you've been since this has all started, but I think they would like to get your perspective as someone who did go through 07, 08 as an agent. Yeah. How does that compare to what you're experiencing now?
The fundamental difference in the 07 to now is that it was a financial crash. We were lending money to people who barely had a pulse, and they had no credit scores. I mean, they were doing many two mortgage loans. One was a regular loan, one was a HELOC. The HELOC was tied to the interest rates, to the prime rate. So as soon as that started going through the roof in 2006, the Fed started raising that quite rapidly. All those people went from a second mortgage bill of $90 to $400. And they just couldn't afford it. And that just spiraled. So the difference now is we don't, while we have unemployment that's high right now, 90% of the workforce is working. You know, I mean, that hasn't stopped. Lenders have tightened up a little bit on lending when you come to stuff, but it's nothing like 07 and 08. I mean, people couldn't borrow. There was no money to borrow to buy. And that's not the problem now. The problem is just we need more inventory to sell. That's really our, you know.
So at the agent level, though, 07 hits. You mentioned you're doing bank-owned open houses. You're trying to do everything you can. So at that point, did your business basically come to a halt?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I knew it was going to, I prepared for it because I moved down here. So I knew there'd be a momentum, but I wasn't prepared for momentum of nothing it was sort of like someone putting on the brakes, and that just wasn't happening here. It was happening up north. So the result would have been the same regardless of where I was sitting at the time. The whole country was in that. So
it makes me think, Joe, for a second. You picked probably the absolute worst time to get into real estate in a new state. You moved here, no sphere of influence, no past client database, and a market crash.
And Craig, I only knew how to get from my apartment to the office. That's all I knew of Tampa.
Right, but you were resourceful enough to find REO properties and hold open houses to at least throw your hook in the water so you could catch something.
I did that. I went every Wednesday. I went to the South Tampa Brokers Open so I could get to know the area, so I could get to know the other agents, because I wanted the other agents to know me. When I put in an offer, they knew who I was, because, you know, South Tampa is a small neighborhood. So, and that was helpful. I had a friend who worked at Coldwell Banker who helped me through that. That's kind of why I went there to begin with, so I wouldn't be totally lost. But the whole year was a learning curve, because someone wanted to go to Fishhawk, and I put them on hold. I said, "Does anybody know where Fishhawk is?" Because I never heard of it. So,
you know what I think?
And by the way, half the people in South Tampa didn't know where it was either, because they didn't go, that's way out there. So, you know, the one thing Relo did for me, though, was got me to learn the area very well. If I knew a client was coming in a week from now looking at Fishhawk, I went out and I canvassed Fishhawk. I made some appointments. I went to get to know the neighborhoods. I was, you just have to, I guess the term is learn your craft, learn what you're doing, and learn about the schools and read up on them, how they're graded and all that. It was a lot of work the first year.
You had to learn a whole new market.
Let me jump into that, because I think there's a couple little tidbits in there that I want to call out. Number one, we talk about 07, like I was 07, but when you're in the middle of 07, you don't know when it's going to end, right? No. You don't know that it was only going to be another year or two, right? You're sitting there going, I am stuck. I am in a situation and I have to tread water and learn. And you've got nothing going for you, really, truly, at that point in time at this. So you were resourceful and did it. What I love about this is because you were smart, because you were a relo person yourself. And you came here not knowing anything about the marketplace. So talk about connecting with somebody who's coming here and doesn't know the marketplace. You're better off than somebody who was born and raised here. because you know exactly the questions that are in their head. You know their fears, you know the doubts, you know the anxieties, you know the confusion of where the hell is Fishhawk versus Lakeland versus Lakewood Ranch versus Tampa and Dunedin and Treasure Island and Davis Island. And it's like all in this big muddy little pool that you had to figure out for yourself. So it was so fresh and new. I think you related very well with those people too.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I want to
part
add
of
to
the
that,
thing,
too.
I'm
Let
sorry.
me just call this out, because as a company for a long time, we've been teaching get listings, get listings, get listings. But I want people to know that there is another world out there, and working with buyers is a great way to get market knowledge. All right. And I do want to talk on this because, there's a lot of bad things about relocation business because you got to pay a heavy referral fee to get it. But I'd like you to kind of comment on that, because it gave you opportunities that you would have otherwise had. And those opportunities now, you mentioned before we started this video, that you've got 400 past clients now in the Tampa Bay market.
Yeah.
That is a wealth, and you're dealing with children of customers now.
Yes.
So you pay a little, I think Jeff called it a VIG up front, but you acquired a customer that you then service long term, and you've got a database.
And it also goes to, hey, my brother's looking for a house. My mother's moving down to Florida to be near us. Can you help her? I mean, the key though is keeping a contact with all those people, and that is a religion. Jeff and I have talked about it a number of times. How many touch points do you give? I call it touch points. How many times a year do you touch them? And how do you touch them? And you have to do it in multiple different ways, not the same way. Some are by text, some are by mail, some are by, something coming in the mail as a gift. Some different way of doing it. Email are you sending are they connected into your Facebook, business Facebook, and that. So, I do the custom magazines myself to all my past clients, and I'm going to say probably 5 of my listings last year was a result of that book that I pay roughly $200 a month.
So it's kind of like you earn your stripes with buyers, and then those buyers become your listings, and now you've got a steady stream of listings constantly coming in. Exactly.
Because the nice thing about Relo is they're probably only going to be here 3 to 5 years, and they might move. I'm always disappointed when the people retire here, because then I have to haunt them for their children's stuff.
But Craig, I think you just brought up an interesting point that I think a lot of agents don't really think about. When you sell somebody a house, right, you're not just selling that person a house, right? You're creeping into their mind, right, and their brain. If you do a good job, and Joe, your testimonials are amazing, right? And you're doing $15-16 million plus a year in business. So, I mean, you've got a lot of business going on. And, but what agents I think sometimes forget is this isn't just somebody who bought a house. This is somebody who has a network of several hundred people of their own, right? And yes, you'll probably get their business again in 3 to 5 years. But what's more important to that is the tribe that they have, right? The people they work with, the people in their neighborhood, the people that they do their dry cleaning, the people that they become their friends, their social network, all of the stuff that you now become the realtor, right? There's only room, we always talk about this, there's only room for one person in this filing cabinet, right? Somebody probably has an accountant, somebody probably has an attorney that they trust, you have a doctor, and then you have a realtor, right? That you trust for real estate advice. So what I think you've done amazingly well is you've creeped into that mind of several hundred people now that all have several hundred people into their tribe. So when they're at a cocktail party or a kid's birthday party and somebody mentions real estate, because of your touch points, you're the first person that pops into their mind and say, you got to call Joe Diener, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why you would say, what do you say the lifetime value of a customer is? What would you think it is?
If I can make it about $30,000, maybe more. I mean, I just got a call from somebody yesterday. Hey, you did their house and we're thinking about moving to Florida. Can we come down? We're looking for a $500,000 house. I don't know how you put a value to it. That would be a really good project for me to do when I retire, Jeff.
Century 21 came up with a number. They say the value of a customer is $130,000 over the lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, if you keep in contact. I mean, I bought my own myself, and because I was transferred myself with the company I was with. I have probably bought 5 houses, not including this one, and I don't remember the real estate agent's name who helped me with any of those houses, because they never contacted me after they sold me my house. Never got a card in the mail, nothing. And so, what's wrong with that? I mean, why wouldn't you do that? So, how hard is it to send a darn calendar out, even at Christmas time?
Well, here's a question for you. How did you address all these past clients during the COVID-19 pandemic, since we've been quarantined and stay safe at home?
So what I did was really funny. I ordered calendars for this year, and I stuck a note in them, and I said, I hope everything is fine and safe, and you're spending time with your family, and attached into a calendar. I mean, it was just something, it's kind of quirky, but it was like,
But you did reach out to all of them.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Everyone got something in the mail. And we were talking about the other day, during our meeting, is people are home. They're there. They're reading their mail. Send them some mail. Okay. So they're going to read it because they're there. And, but Jeff, back to one of your questions is also thinking outside the point. We all try to do something like everybody else, and sometimes you just have to massage it a little bit a different way. Like when I follow up with them on the phone, or past client on the phone, how you doing? How's it going? Are you liking it here? When I hear they say, yeah, we're not going to move again, we're staying here, that's really disappointing. But you have to reach out. You have to reach out.
Change your mindset that we're going to stay there for a while and sell an investment property.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the next. I'm in the process of doing a couple of those right now. So
with all the equity they bought because they took your advice and bought back then.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
What I like is, if you think about the touch points that Joe's just talking about, he doesn't have to sell him, right? That's already done for him. They like him, they trust him, and they know he's good at what he does. It's not like your doctor needs to call you and say, hey, Craig, just to let you know, I performed a lot of really good checkups on clients this year, and I hope one day you'll consider coming back. Yeah, they don't do that, right? Because they already have that trust. They own that position in your mind, and when you have an issue, you know who you're going to call. So that's what I think. It's just being top of mind, saying, I hope you're well with your name is enough, because your name means real estate. But that, to those who are starting out that don't have the luxury of several hundred past clients, right? You've got to pretend. I mean, your background, you've got an MBA, you've got the business background, you got 20 something years in a real job, right? We'll say, right, with a sales career business that required prospecting, follow up, right? Accountability and reporting. And it became a job within a day in and day out, right? You just got used to that habit. So to you, I love listening. It's how in the world did the people that sold me my largest financial transaction, 5 of them, never even follow up to say hi or send me a thank you card, right? How in the world is that even possible? Because this is not normally treated like a business, right? And so people like you who come in with a business mind, or those who are watching that haven't been in business, just use some logic, common sense, and say, look, just say something and stay in touch and make sure they're having a good experience. If they're not having a good experience, help them have a good experience, right? I'm sure you've helped people with an AC guy find a fence guy, figure out a handyman and a roofer years down the road after you sell them a house, because they're there for you. It's
a plan though, right? And I think that's the biggest difference. If you really get to the bottom of it, Joe came in with a plan. And I talk to agents about this a lot, because I don't care whatever your top level of your business funnel is going to be. For Joe, it was using Relo, right, as a top level to get the customer in the door,
catalyst,
build trust, build brand, right? Then if I retarget them, right, if we look at this from an e-commerce perspective, this is the exact strategy every e-commerce business uses. Get customers in the top door. Some will buy, most won't. then re-nurture those customers by retargeting them, right? Constantly building trust, building brand until you get a large amount to convert. And that's exactly what he did. The problem is that most want to just focus on just the top end of that funnel. Well, that's not going to work. I don't care if it's using Relo Business. I don't care if it's you buying Zillow ads. I don't care if it's you running Facebook. So what I always talk to an agent about whenever they say, hey, I'm going to go buy business, great. That's a great marketing plan. Where's your follow-up plan? Right? Because if you don't have one, if you don't say, hey, I'm going to go get this and I'm going to have to spend X to do it. And the way Joe did it was, you know what? I don't want to come out of pocket to do it, but I'm okay having that variable expense in the beginning, right? That referral fee. Yeah, I'm going to give it up. I'm not going to make as much, but that's my marketing fee, right? That's the same way to look at it and saying, I'm going to go spend a couple grand on Facebook ads. It's the same concept. It's just doing it in a different way.
Plus, you only pay for it works.
Right. And so it's variable, which is actually a little bit more attractive. But the reality is where most agents end up getting pissed off about relocation business is because the only deal they ever get is that first one. So they don't ever experience the lifetime value of the customer because they didn't go into it with a plan. They didn't go into it and say, you know what, I'm going to use this to get the customer, but then I've got my database and I'm going to nurture the hell out of that database, which is going to give me $130,000 per customer over the lifetime, which means I can make a lot of money in this business without ever having to actually spend any money out of pocket. Right. And that's the difference. And so I just want to make that point across that I don't care how you're going to go about getting your business, whether you're brand new, whether you're going to buy it, whether you're going to do relocation business, you just have to have a plan going in, especially on the follow-up side. So it's great to have that marketing plan, but what is your follow-up plan? If you don't have one, you're host.
Hey, Mike, let me add into that because I think it did take an interesting little twist on that one. Every business, and I'm saying business because Joe, you've got a great business background as well. Every business has a customer acquisition cost.
Yes.
Right? Whether you know you do or not, you do. And so this industry, if thought about as a business, is unbelievable because you get a customer acquisition cost, right? You actually get paid, right? When you actually get a deal, that deal, yeah, you might get 5, 6, 7 grand when you close that deal, but you really bought the future cash flow of $130,000. Okay. And that's the biggest misconception and screw up, I think, from an agent's perspective, because the reality of it is those 5 houses that you relisted, nobody should have ever got those listing other than the guy who sold you that house, right?
Right.
If proper follow-up, you would have used those same people again because it's the path of least resistance and you didn't really want to go search for somebody else. It would have been so much easier if John Wilson, whoever his name was, would have followed up with you and stayed in touch points for 3 or 4 times a year minimum and at least had a calendar magnet on your fridge, right? Then 5 years later, you would have said, hey, look, Joe owns that spot and John owns that spot. He would have had that deal. But I think that's really interesting. So what is the customer acquisition cost? From a relo perspective, right? It was a variable cost. It cost you nothing. You paid a little bit and that was your customer acquisition cost. The customer came to you and you paid variable. And then now you have an asset that's worth $130,000. All you have to do is say hi to them every once in a while. So you remain top of mind and get their kids, friends, parents when they're getting transferred out from the softball league, right? That's the beautiful thing. That's the business mind that comes into this one that I get excited about.
Well, that's why Wall Street's putting so much money into our industry because we've done, as an industry, a pretty bad job of maintaining those relationships.
Right. And Jeff, when you brought, the customer acquisition, most companies have a customer retention fund too. How do they retain those customers that they got? And most real estate agents don't look at it as you have to spend to retain them. It's not free. They just don't automatically come back to you. Not every one of my past clients comes back to me because their neighbor down the street is a realtor and they're right there and they got to know them and they know them now better than they know. I mean, that happens. That's never going to not happen. But I would say retention-wise of my past clients, I can keep track. About 80% of my past clients I retain. As far as when they're ready to sell, they call me, and that's pretty high.
Yeah, let's if you don't mind, Joe, let's go down that path for just a minute there. What do you do? Because you're amazing at it. So give a little help to those who are watching. I mean, we've got agents literally watching from all around the world, different countries in this one. We truly do. It's really cool. What do you do? how do you stay top of mind? How do you touch them? Let's give us a couple of examples of how Joe Diener does it.
Well, Mike hit on a point of it, and part of it is a plan. So at the end of the year, I start my business plan for the following year. And we did it in a meeting at the office one day, and we talked about touch points and what every month you can do. What do you touch? How do you touch it? How is it variable? I know that I'm going to send out calendars, baseball cards, hockey magnets. You know, I know this. I know which things I'm going to do. And then on the off months, you know, what do you do for Mother's Day? Are you sending out emails to your clients that are mothers? You know, so you build that plan, and you try to build it in the sense that it makes sense, that I'm not hitting the customer with the same thing every month. My magazines are split into thirds. So a third of my base gets a magazine every quarter. So in other words, they all don't get it every month. It's split into thirds. That way it keeps the cost down. But, you know, if you hit them too much, then it becomes, oh, here's something else from Joe. Throw it out. All right. So you want them to be top of mind, but you want it to be relevant. And, you know, and they want to know. The things we're working on now are Remind. That's the new, every year you come up with something different. And Otis and I are working with Remind, and how do we go back out to our past clients and give them a CMA on their place and say, hey, we're just keeping in touch with you. Here's where your house is in the market. That's a really awesome tool to use. And we're getting everybody to use it as well as the old man here. So
what's the coolest thing that you think that you've done from a touch point that got the biggest response? If you think back over the years that you actually got the text or the phone calls, like that was really cool. Thanks, Joe.
I'll tell you the biggest things that was when I started the magazines, and because they're really very professional magazine. They have recipe cards in and stuff, and I can customize it, and I can put one of my own recipes in it, and one of my own recipes in it. So I think I put one of my chocolate cake recipes in one of them. And I mean, it's silly things. And most of your customers get to know you while you're out showing them 30 houses or whatever, you know? So they get comfortable with you, and they pick up the phone. The other thing which I get a lot of response to, Jeff, is the cards that we get that you pay into the client care. I can never remember the name of that.
Preferred Client Club.
That's it. Thank you. I mean, that is the best money spent. That, you know, I'll write a quick handwritten note in it and drop my card in it. And I'll tell you, I get lots of emails back from them. Nice hearing from you. Everything's great. One time I drove by a customer's house. I saw they got their pool in, and I wrote them in their card, hey, I saw you got your pool in. I bet it looks awesome. And the next day he sent me a picture of it on an email. So, I mean, it's that little stuff. It's getting to know them and what makes them tick and that kind of stuff.
I love it. I love it. Now, I notice you'll never give the recipe out for your carrot cake. You'll do
carrot cake
ones,
will not go. No.
Secret recipe. Joe Diener makes the world's best carrot cake on the planet, so he's got to.
But, you know, Jeff, yours and my birthday are this month, so I have a feeling one's going to be made this month for us.
I look forward to that. I think he puts crack in it. I really do. That's why he doesn't want to reveal the recipe. So, all right. So let's sugar. All right. So let's talk about evolution of happiness, because I bet you the 2011 version is very different than the 2015 version, which is very different than the 2018 version, which is very different than the 2020 version of Diener. How do you watch the evolution, and how do you define happiness as things change in your life and you evolve? So let's touch on that for a minute, how that works for you.
Well, you know, you're a young parent yet, Jeff. So, you know, as you go through life, your life changes because your family changes, your needs change, your what you need out of income. You know, when I moved down here, I sold a 4,500 square foot house, sold the sold the snowblower, got rid of the wife, you know,
Right.
cleaned house.
Did you just call her a snowblower?
Sold the snowblower. And, you know, it's one of those things that, you know, life just changes all the time, and you cannot be at any age and go, this is it. You know, I'll be 65 this month, and every year is different. Every year has different goals. Every decade has something different. You know, the 70s, we were getting gas by whether we had an even or odd number at the end of our license plate because gas was rationed. You know, the 80s, Craig lived with that with the very high interest rates on houses, 16%. My first house I bought had 12.5% interest, and I thought I was getting a deal. You know, the 90s, you know, every decade has something that makes you have to adjust, and you got to adjust, and you got to learn. And happiness is different. My life is very different now than it was when I was raising kids. You know, I call them and ask them how to fix my computer instead of them asking me how to do algebra. So, you know, it's just different. It's just different.
But what's interesting is that you consistently are a massive top producer. I mean, you're in the top percentile of all real estate agents in the entire country, right? You make significant six figures every year, and you're a phenomenal agent, right? So that doesn't change, but the reasons why do change, right? Like, so what is the, let's fast forward, let's take a rewind to 5 years ago versus to today. Your income level was very similar, but your reasons why are different. Like, so what are some reasons why? Like, why do you continue to produce at the level you produce right now? You've got your house, you've got your vacations, you've got, I mean, you can look at you and say boxes are checked. It's good. He's made millions over his career. So what's the happiness drive for you right now?
I like money. No,
no, that's good.
I like money, but you know, it's not just the money. I mean, I truly do really enjoy helping the younger agents, keeping Craig out of jail. You know, I was very, very lucky when I got into real estate. I had a really good mentor and helped me through it. And I was one of those people, I know I have to check this box, but why am I checking it? I need to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's a lot of the questions I get today from the good agents. It's, I know I got to do this, but why am I doing it? Can you explain to me why this is happening? And real estate is like chess. You have to think 3 moves down the board. You know, you have to understand if something happens here, it's going to affect two moves down. And what are those 2 moves? And a lot of that, Jeff, you and I it happens because we're experienced. We know if X happens, Y might happen too. So, you know, you get to know that, but, you know, I could probably make a hell of a lot more money than I am if I didn't do the manager's job. But that was one of the reasons why I left Coldwell Banker, because I didn't have that avenue that I could do. And I knew I could have that avenue at Beggins. When I met Craig, it was funny, Jeff, when you interviewed me, my first time I met Craig was at Topgolf. You invited me to the Topgolf event, and, you know, I went there and I listened to Craig's talk, and I'm looking around and I'm like, we do this once a quarter because I'm doing my job. This is kind of cool. If the boss is inviting me to lunch, I'm certainly going to honor him and go to it, you know? So, and it's do I have to sometimes rearrange my schedule? Yes. It is an award for me, but I think it's also a little bit out of respect for Craig that he's doing this. I mean, it is, if you've never been with another broker, Jeff, you and I've had that talk. Here you go, buddy. Thanks for selling $10 million. Here's your rubber chicken and mashed potatoes, and thanks for coming.
Black, yep.
Yeah, your little plaque, plastic plaque. It's a different feeling. Any major agent in this area is getting bombarded by people wanting to recruit them, and that's no surprise because Mike does the same thing. Okay, so that's not a surprise, but it's like, they don't realize I'm also the sales manager for the office, so they don't, they only see my production figures. So it's rewarding. I enjoy doing it. I hope I can do it until I'm 75.
You know what I think is really
answer
cool?
to a happiness question.
What's that? I'm sorry. Was that too long?
No. I said, he asked you about your happiness thing a couple minutes ago, and we finally found out what it is.
You know what's cool about that, Craig, though? When he first started going through his background, the first passion, right? Go back to it. The first drive, the first job, what he really wanted to do was what? Teach. Right? And he loves, Joe, you're one of the most giving people I know, right? And you love you hit a couple things there. You love teaching, and you had a great mentor, which kind of was a catalyst for you to have an amazingly successful career, right? And so from a teacher mindset, from an empathetic mindset to your giving nature, right? The drive is, it's great to make nice money, but it's also really cool to mentor others to show them how to make a nice living. And, the office you're in with our South Tampa office is an amazing asset from the management team. In that office, we've got a ton of people that are in the top in the country making unbelievable incomes. And I know that feels good to you to be able to help them through these questions and these God minutes. So I think it's the contribution. And Mike, I think you see this kind of common thread through all the top agents that enter onto the Happy Agent podcast. It's something more than themselves. It's giving back. It's helping. It's being that mentor. It's being that guide to let them to do it. Because guys, we have it. Our whole philosophy of a company is help, right? You never have to worry about money if you help enough people get to the goals that they want. And I think you're a great example of, and you're living proof of that. So that's what I want to just commend you for being awesome.
It starts with income for almost everyone, right? Because we're all listen. The reality is everyone works to create income and wealth to some degree, right? That wealth, that income may be different for every single person. Goal may be different, all that, but it usually starts that way. But the common thread amongst all of the successful agents, especially the ones that even the 5 so far we've had on this podcast, there's really one common thread. And that is when they reach that level and they realize, okay, I've made money, but what's that next evolution for me? And almost all of them have given up the potential income, more potential income, to do something else that they really enjoy, right? And that's really, for me, that's the thing, right? That's when you get to that point, and Joe hit it. I could make more money, right? But at some point, money becomes not the driver, right? At some point, it's got to be something else. And if you don't evolve that, if you don't figure out what that something else is, you're gonna struggle a little bit, at least mentally. And so that's a big common thread, is at some point in your career, you've got to beyond money, right? And it's okay for it to be money. Like everyone's like, oh, I feel bad. Say, no, it's okay. It should be money. You need money, right? But at some point, the money is just a catalyst to something else. And if you're willing to literally tell yourself, you know what, I could go make another $100,000, but I'd rather do this, and mean it to the point where you're literally giving up that income to go do that, that's when you really find what you really enjoy doing, which I think for you has been that mentorship, that coaching, that managing, that helping others achieve their dreams and their income level. So, and that thing is different for everyone, but I think if you're listening, watching, that's really the takeaway with almost every single one of our top agents.
The thing is with real estate. Well, oh, there you go. The thing is with real estate is no two deals are alike. They're not. They're different. And with the younger agents, they get a little overwhelmed. They don't know. We can't teach them everything in a class that they're going to hit. It's just impossible. I couldn't sit in the conference room and give enough classes for them to do it. But to be a calming force and walking them through it and helping them, that's a good thing. I mean, and sometimes some of the stuff, it's not the transaction. They're having problems with the other agent. It's not the actual transaction they're having. They're having problems with the other agent on the other line. The other agent doesn't understand the contract, or doesn't know how to control the transaction. I mean, a lot of that. And it's teaching them calmly how the transaction has to go.
I think you nailed it earlier, Joe, when you said this is a true chess game, when you're always playing a few steps in advance. The challenge is when you have people in this industry that are playing checkers, right? And they're thinking about just this one move. I mean, everything is the next couple of steps, right? But unless you've already seen those other couple steps, you can't guide them. You just don't know. So that's the issue. One of the biggest challenges I see in the industry right now is most of the brokers, right, have gotten into this business after 08 and 09. And they don't know about the next steps ahead because they never had to, because frankly, it's been a pretty cushy ride, right? Since 08, 09, 10, you don't have to work that hard. You have to do a good job, but it's not been a big financial burden and market struggle, right? There hasn't been one. So the good thing for everybody sitting here from our perspective and from your perspective, you've lived it, breathed it, done it. You know what happens. You know if it keeps going or something else happens, you know how to do short sales. You know what REOs look like. You know how to hold people's hands and tell them to calm down and freak out. And you know the repercussions of pricing things improperly and doing knee-jerk reactions when you can calm your clients down and say, sit back, relax. This is not a financial crisis. This is a simple health crisis, and we're going to get through it. And because you see what happens on the other end of it, that experience from an agent to a client perspective, from a manager to an agent perspective, from a brokerage to a manager agent perspective, I think is very much overlooked and underappreciated, especially in times like this, and a very changing market. And it's an industry that's going through major changes right now.
One of the biggest things when I'm working with agents is getting to understand that they have to set the expectation for the client. I'm available from 8 to 8. Here's my hours I work. Here, here's different. Setting just small expectations, because I tell them in the absence of setting an expectation, the client will set it for you. All right. If you don't kind of say this is how we work, that's why like when I send out my letters like, hey, this is how we buy a house. You need to be pre-approved first. Then we go look at houses, and then there's a step. And you know what? I learned that because I've gotten burnt years ago by taking somebody out and then finding out that they couldn't buy a banana on credit, So it's one of those things that is really, really important. And it's getting the newer agents to understand that their time is money. It's not free. When you spend time with a client, you're investing. It's an investment of your time for an end return. All right. But if there's no end return, you've not invested, you've wasted. And they're two different parameters. Now, in December, if I want to take a gamble and I don't have anything else to do and I want to say, oh, let's see, I'm not busy, I'll go take this person out. They don't have a pre-approval. So I said no to going to the beach for the day, and I'm just driving this client around who can't buy a house.
Right. Yeah. But Joe,
when you say yes to something, you say no to something else. That's just the way it works. So to be smart with it.
I want to peel back something that I think a lot of people might have missed when you were just saying that one, that I think is a key determining factor to your success. You work towards the end result. Okay. But to most people, the end result is a closing. To you, the end result is selling their kids a house. Right. Right. And that's the major difference, right? Yeah. That's the long-term thinking here. The end result is the future cash flow valuation of that client, but not because it's about the money, it's because you actually care And you actually take it personally, because I know you, because you're passionate about this business. If people don't use you, you feel bad because they didn't get the level of expertise that they should have, they deserve, right? And for some reason they chose not to, and it was not in their best interest to not use you, right? So it's not about the money ever with you. I know that for sure. Right. But it's about, they know, you know, that you're the best choice to guide them through this transaction. And I think that's a big determining factor.
And a lot of it is understanding your value. And we talk about that all the time, Jeff, in our trainings. We talk about value. What is our value? You know, we made a whole video what our value is for a listing, right? And it's so wonderful. We need to hire that voiceover guy because he was really good. But I recently got a referral. It was an incoming broker to broker referral, and they had their house on the market. This is November. They weren't getting anybody doing it, and they just didn't like the realtors, so they ended up coming in. They fired the other guy, and I came in and I sat down with them with a listing presentation, and I went over, you know, this is what he does. This is what, you know, this is what corporate does. Now, this is what Joe does. This is up and beyond what to get to your house, get your house sold. I call it my sizzle. This is me. This is what you get that you're not getting anywhere else. Because you don't sell the steak, which is the sign on the front lawn. You sell the sizzle. And that's everything else behind you that you're doing, the Facebook that Mike has taught us, you know, the postcards, or whatever else that you're doing, that's your sizzle. And when I got done, the seller said to me, well, how much do you charge commission? And I said, we charge 3% to market your house. Then you and I can decide how much we're going to pay the other broker. And he goes, you're going to do all of this for 3%? Which kind of made me feel happy because I wowed him enough. He goes, the other guy didn't do anything, and he was charging me 2.5.
There you go.
Okay.
So it's value.
What is the value proposition? And that's kind of where you got to do to set your marketing.
I love it. I mean, those are tidbits that a lot of people don't think about because they're not thinking about the next steps on there. So I know. I mean, what I love.
It's a little easier, I think, as you get more experience. You know, we were talking this morning that it takes a compelling reason to do something that, like real estate, right? There's a lot of things that go into it. There's some hard knocks that come with it too.
Right.
But the second part that goes with that is a belief that you can. And as you gain the experience now with hundreds of customers, past customers in your database, you don't have to worry about belief that I can right now. And I think you've been invaluable helping the newer agents in the company believe that they can because they got your back behind it. So that's a shout out.
What I try to always tell them is, you can sell Jim Jones what Jim Jones buys if you can see Jim Jones through Jim Jones' eyes. So basically, put yourself in that buyer's shoes. What is it, if you were standing in them, would you expect? What is it you would expect from your agent? And try to put yourself in his feet. When they arrive from out of town, how are you greeting them? How have you prepared the day for them? You know, is it organized? You know, do they have children? Did you stick some waters and granola bars in your cooler in your trunk so in case, you know, somebody gets cool? I mean, it's just little things, but it does. Just think a little bit about how you would want to be treated as a buyer is basically what that says. But you can sell him anything. It doesn't matter whether it's real estate or bowling balls. It doesn't matter. It's just
because it's trust.
It's the trust, yes, and trying to put yourself in his shoes and what they'll want and what they need.
And knowing that they have fears, they have doubts, they have anxieties. It's relocating their family and their kids and new friends, and you know. And you may overlook the granola bar and the bottle of water, but that's shows you care. That you thought about them, that you actually understand. I mean, those little things are the things that just solidify you in their brain as this guy is not after a commission check. He actually understands our position, and he's showing us the playgrounds, right? He's talking to us about where the bike trail is because he listened and knows that I like to ride my bike, right? These are the things that just galvanize you to your customers. And we could see it over and over, Craig. I mean, look at the testimonials we see from Joe. They're stellar on this one. So that's
I've relocated myself 4 times in life for corporate. And it's like you're being parachuted in and you have no idea where you are or what's close or when anything. So it's putting yourself, I just remember back, I got promoted to Poughkeepsie, New York, and I didn't even know where Poughkeepsie was. And I had to drive there and meet up with somebody and then figure out if I'm actually going to move my family there, wife and 2 kids. I mean, it was very stressful, and it is very stressful for these people. And if you can make it easy for them, if you can calm some of the anxiety, and a lot of that is educating them of what's the next move, what's coming next, what it is that they're going to need, then it helps them. And that's kind of like, I've developed all those letters that I send out it's in stages to help them calm them down.
When you're playing the chess game with them, knowing that here's the fear you're going to have 2 weeks from now, and I know it's coming. And so a week from now, I'm going to send you this because I know you're about to feel this. And that just, again, shows that you care.
I have a letter that goes out to them with, I call it the congratulations letter. It has all the important dates on it, and all that. And I have learned with my clients, before I call them on the phone and tell them that they have gotten the deal, I fill out that whole email, and while I'm talking to them on the phone, I hit send. Because I said, I've just sent you an email with all the important dates, and everything we're going to be doing for the next 2 weeks. I want you to read through it, and I'll call you back later today and we can discuss it. Because now all of a sudden they're thinking about 15 other things like moving trucks and everything else. And I need them to absorb the fact that they got the house and then you can read the letter. And then in the calmness of the storm, I can talk to them about inspections and all that kind of stuff. So it's just, you just have to, again, put yourself in their shoes of what
empathy.
It's exactly right. It's exactly right. Yep. Empathy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I love your story, and I think that you are a great example for agents. You really are. And we're proud to have you on the team. And I think that this was full of nuggets of information about how to really, really take care of your clients. I think that's a great summary of what it is. So, I mean, from my perspective, we love having you on board with our team. As an agent and as more importantly as a management team from a mentor perspective, and just bringing your knowledge to everybody out there. So thank you for all you do for us.
Well, you're welcome. It's agents like you, Joe, that aren't going to be replaced by the internet.
No. I'll tell you what, I love to see that when something goes sideways, how they're going to handle that. But and it's hard to believe it's been 4 years. So thanks guys for keeping me around.
Wow.
One of the things I was thinking for a second is you're just turning 65. You've got another 20 years plus that you can be playing this game, because it's not about the money. I mean, what are you going to do? You can only play with the orchids so many hours a week, right?
My husband is 48. I'm not sitting home making cookies. So,
no. but think about this. And I think as a parting thought for you, think about the 45-year-old version of you and how much you've grown and accomplished and just knocked down over the last 20 years from 45 to 65. You got an entire another one of those runs, which is so cool, right? And just for fun. And so that's why the primary aims and the vision boards and all the other stuff that you're doing is like, okay, where's the next cruise? Where's the next investment property? Where's the next something? I mean, it's a chess game for you to get to the point where you can just have all this funding flowing around to accomplish what you will want to do. So I'm enjoying watching the ride.
I was talking to Otis yesterday, and we were talking about DISC, and I said, I've become your dad does the course, but I've had, I've had that for 17, 18 years now, learning that and mastering it. And I said to Otis, if I had this training when I was 22 in sales, I would have sold twice as much as what I did. I mean, when I was selling at 22 and 20, I don't know what I was doing. I was, no clue. But had I had that, that little bit of knowledge of how to decipher someone else's personality and react to it, it's fundamental. I mean, that's just sales. It's just learning, how to, hey, I got a high C in the car. I'm printing out a copy of the contract ahead of time. I'll let them read it. It's just knowing that person, what you're going to deal with. Come on, dude, you got to sign the contract. We're four offers and they want to make a decision and you can't take 2 days to read the contract. So, it's knowing that. And
that goes back to chess, because you noticed from the original inbound email that he asked a lot of detailed technical questions. So you were prepared, and it wasn't the granola bar, it was the contract, right? That he was going to appreciate the most. So there's the value that experience brings and good mentorship and leadership does. So.
Right. Well, thank you guys. This has been great.
Joe, thank you for taking time. You know how busy you are with everything. And we appreciate all that you do. And thanks for imparting your knowledge on our group here.
Here's the files I'm working on right now. So.
Good deal.
Can't keep a good man down.
What's that?
Can't keep a good man down. Pandemic or not.
One, I've got 4 more to close this month. So that's that pile. And I think another 3 or 4 scheduled for June so far. So, yep.
Love it.
Keep moving.
Thanks for your time, Joe.
Thank you, sir.
I hope you enjoyed this one. Full of great content.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Craig.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you.